Picture this. By 2030, the Arctic could be almost ice-free in summer, unlocking new shipping lanes and vast resources. But as the ice recedes, Russia's formidable Arctic bases are becoming more accessible, turning a frozen frontier into a hotbed of international rivalry. What does this future hold for the world's superpowers? So, imagine this. It's the middle of summer in the Arctic, but instead of endless sheets of white ice, the ocean stretches wide and blue. Seals drift where glaciers used to stand, and ships slice through waters that were once solid as stone. Scientists say this could be our reality by 2030. An Arctic almost completely free of ice during the summer months. It's hard to imagine, right? A region frozen for thousands of years, suddenly opening up like a long hidden treasure map. And beneath those cold waters, an enormous prize. Untapped oil, natural gas, and rare minerals that could fuel the world for decades. But here's where things get really interesting. While much of the world has been watching the ice melt from afar, Russia has been getting ready. For years, it's been quietly turning the far north into something more than a frozen wilderness. It's turning it into a fortress. As the ice pulls back, what's emerging isn't just new shipping lanes or mining opportunities, but a new kind of battlefield. One built on strategy, resources, and power. Stretching across thousands of kilometers of coast, Russia's Arctic frontier is lined with a growing web of military bases. Some of them are relics from the old Soviet days, crumbling bunkers and abandoned airfields that once echoed with the Cold War's icy tension. But now, they've been revived. Satellites show glistening new radar domes, upgraded runways, and sleek military hardware where there was once only snow and silence. Experts call this network the Arctic Shield, a defensive wall designed to guard Russia's northern border, and to make sure the world knows who's in charge up there. At the center of it all stands the pride of Russia's northern might, the Northern Fleet, stationed near the port city of Murmansk. This fleet isn't just any collection of ships. It's packed with nuclear submarines, fighter aircraft, and something no other country on Earth has at the same scale, a fleet of nuclear-powered icebreakers. These massive ships are like floating beasts of steel, capable of smashing through walls of ice that would trap any normal vessel. But their job isn't just to clear a path. They're keeping the northern sea route alive, a shortcut that links Europe and Asia through Arctic waters. For Russia, this route is pure gold. Faster trade, stronger control, and a new highway through a part of the planet that's suddenly up for grabs. And here's where the story widens. Because Russia isn't alone in this frozen race. As the Arctic opens up, other nations are watching with a mix of fascination and unease. The United States, Canada, Norway, and even China are all eyeing the same stretch of icy territory, each with their own ambitions tucked beneath the talk of scientific research and climate cooperation. It's not hard to see why. The Arctic holds nearly a quarter of the world's undiscovered oil and gas, and as global temperatures rise, those resources are becoming easier and cheaper to reach. Now imagine the scene from above. Fleets of icebreakers carving paths through the thinning ice, drones buzzing overhead, satellites scanning every movement below. The once silent top of the world is slowly turning into a global stage where every move counts. What was once a frozen desert has become the next geopolitical hotspot, a place where science, commerce, and military power are starting to blend in unpredictable ways. The United States has begun rebuilding its own Arctic presence, upgrading bases in Alaska and launching new polar icebreakers after decades of neglect. Canada is boosting patrols and building new research stations, trying to assert its claim over the Northwest Passage, a sea route that could rival Russia's northern sea route in importance. Even China, which has no Arctic coastline at all, now calls itself a near-Arctic state. It's investing heavily in polar research and shipping, sending icebreakers north each year as part of what it calls the Polar Silk Road. But while others plan and prepare, Russia is already there. Its soldiers are training in sub-zero conditions, its radar systems sweep across thousands of miles, and its bases operate year-round, fortified and supplied even in the dead of winter. For Russia, this isn't just about territory or trade, it's about power. The kind that comes from being able to control the world's newest frontier before anyone else does. And yet, the Arctic remains unpredictable. Beneath its beauty lies danger. Melting permafrost, unpredictable storms, and fragile ecosystems on the edge of collapse. Scientists warn that as nations rush to stake their claims, they could trigger environmental damage that's impossible to undo. But the lure of wealth and dominance is hard to resist, especially in a world hungry for energy and influence. Let's picture it. A cargo ship leaves Shanghai, gliding north instead of west, slicing through icy seas that used to be impassable. Within just a couple of weeks, it could reach Europe, almost twice as fast as it would through the Suez Canal. That's the magic of the Northern Sea Route, a passage that could change the way the world moves its goods. And with climate change melting the Arctic's once frozen barriers, this shortcut is slowly opening up, and Russia wants to be the one holding the map. For Moscow, the Northern Sea Route isn't just a faster way to move ships, it's a golden gate to control global trade. Every vessel that sails through those frigid waters must play by Russia's rules. Get Russian permission, hire Russian ice pilots, and often follow behind Russian escort ships that clear the path. It's more than navigation, it's negotiation. Each trip brings in money, gives Russia leverage, and tightens its grip on a new global choke point. Whoever controls that route doesn't just guide ships, they guide power itself. And beneath those icy waters, there's an even bigger prize. The Arctic seabed is like a buried treasure chest, holding nearly 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and around 30% of its natural gas. For a country facing Western sanctions and shrinking export markets, those numbers aren't just statistics, they're a lifeline. Russia's leaders see the Arctic as the future of their energy empire, a place where frozen wealth could keep the nation strong for decades to come. But of course, the rest of the world isn't just sitting back and watching. The United States, Canada, Norway, and Denmark, all Arctic nations themselves, have been stepping up. NATO is quietly shifting its attention northward, bringing the Cold War chill back to the ice. American bombers now land in Norwegian bases, British submarines rise through the frozen sea, and Canada's Arctic Rangers, part soldiers, part skilled indigenous hunters, are patrolling more often than ever. It's like the top of the planet has turned into a massive chessboard, with every move watched closely from space. And at the heart of the tension lies a question of borders, invisible lines beneath the sea. Deep under the Arctic Ocean stretches an enormous underwater mountain range called the Lomonosov Ridge. Russia, Canada, and Denmark all claim it belongs to them, arguing that it's an extension of their continental shelves. The United Nations is still deciding who's right. But if Russia's claim is ever approved, it could extend Moscow's reach across nearly half of the Arctic Ocean, along with everything buried beneath it. That's why the Arctic isn't just melting, it's heating up politically too. But for all the talk of power and profit, there's another story unfolding, one that's quieter but far more devastating. The Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. Whole landscapes are changing before people's eyes. The permafrost, once hard as concrete, is thawing, swallowing buildings, cracking roads, and sinking towns. Polar bears and walruses are losing the ice platforms they depend on to hunt and rest. And for indigenous communities who've called this land home for thousands of years, the changes aren't just scientific, they're personal. Their traditions, food sources, and way of life are being erased by forces far beyond their control. For people who've lived in the Arctic for generations, the melting ice isn't a doorway to new trade routes or riches. It's a warning sign. They're watching ancient hunting trails vanish beneath the waves, shorelines crumble into the sea, and traditions that once thrived on the rhythm of ice and snow begin to slip away. What's happening up north isn't just a story about superpowers drawing new borders. It's about families, communities, and cultures trying to hold on as their world literally melts beneath their feet. As one Inuit elder said with quiet sadness, "We used to live with the ice. Now we're learning to live without it." But the Arctic story doesn't stop there. It's getting even more complicated. While Russia flexes its military muscle and Western nations rally to counter it, a new and unexpected player has entered the game: China. On the map, it's thousands of miles away from the Arctic Circle, yet Beijing now calls itself a near-Arctic state. And it's not just talk. China is pouring billions into the region, funding scientific research, building powerful icebreakers, and investing in joint energy ventures with Russia.
If you've made it this far into the video, it means you're enjoying what we do here at Euro Bulletin. Take a second to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more updates and insights from Europe and its partners. Let's dive in more into the subject.
Yosiu, one of the biggest of these partnerships, is the Yamal LNG project, a massive natural gas operation in northern Siberia. It's a symbol of how closely the two countries have begun to work together. Russia brings the land and resources, while China brings the money and technology. Their cooperation isn't about claiming Arctic territory. It's about access. Access to energy, to trade routes, and to a stronger voice in how this new frontier is shaped. And as Russia grows more isolated from the West, China's role in the Arctic keeps expanding, giving Beijing a seat at one of the most strategic tables in the world. So what does all this mean for the future? The Arctic has become more than just a frozen landscape. It's now a crossroads where climate change, politics, and ambition all collide. Every year, as the ice shrinks, new possibilities emerge. Faster shipping, untapped energy, and fresh opportunities for power. But with each opportunity comes a cost. The same melting ice that opens new doors also raises new tensions. Between nations, between people, and between humanity and the planet itself. The truth is, the Arctic isn't just thawing, it's waking up. Every summer, the sea ice retreats a little farther, uncovering more water, more wealth, and more risk. Russia's once-forgotten military outposts now stand as reminders of how quickly the balance of power can shift when nature itself changes the rules. What was once the coldest, quietest place on Earth is turning into one of the most contested and closely watched regions on the planet. And as the world looks north, watching the ice fade into memory, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. The Arctic is no longer just a symbol of untouched wilderness. It's the front line of a rapidly changing Earth, and a stark reminder that even the planet's most frozen edges can't escape the heat of human ambition. The ripples of what's happening in the Arctic are already spreading far beyond its icy edges. What once seemed like a distant, frozen wilderness is now shaping the future of global politics. From Washington to Beijing, from Brussels to Moscow. Every nation with an eye on power is watching closely, because whoever controls the Arctic's new routes and resources won't just influence trade, they'll influence the balance of the entire world. You can already see the early signs of this shift. NATO, once focused on Europe and the Atlantic, is now training for cold weather warfare again. U.S. Marines are drilling in snow-covered forests in Norway. British submarines are resurfacing through Arctic ice. Even countries that used to ignore the far north, like Japan, South Korea, and India, are joining Arctic research programs and shipping ventures, eager not to miss their chance to stake a claim in what many are calling the world's last frontier. For Russia, this growing attention is both a challenge and an opportunity. The Kremlin sees the Arctic as a strategic shield and an economic engine, a place that can fuel its power for decades to come. But every move it makes now draws scrutiny. Western nations are tightening sanctions, restricting Arctic technology exports, and forming new partnerships to keep Moscow in check. The competition is no longer just about who can break the most ice. It's about who can set the rules of a region that's quickly becoming central to global survival. Meanwhile, China is playing a longer game. It doesn't need to plant flags or build bases to expand its reach. Instead, it's investing quietly in ports, pipelines, research stations, and shipping routes. It calls the Northern Sea Route part of its Polar Silk Road, linking Asia and Europe through Arctic waters. Each investment deepens China's presence and gives it leverage in a part of the world it once had no claim to. And as Russia turns east for economic support, that partnership is reshaping the power map of the North, creating a new axis that stretches from the Pacific to the pole. But the real twist is that all of this is unfolding against a backdrop of rapid environmental collapse. The more nations race to exploit the Arctic, the faster the region changes, and the more unstable it becomes. Melting ice releases methane trapped for centuries. Eroding coastlines threaten towns and ecosystems. Once frozen soil collapses, spilling old waste and even ancient diseases long buried beneath the permafrost. The Arctic isn't just revealing riches, it's revealing risks no one is fully prepared for. And yet, even as scientists warn of tipping points and irreversible damage, the sense of urgency isn't slowing governments down, it's speeding them up. The logic seems simple. Get there first, before it's gone. But as the competition intensifies, so does the irony. The same human ambition driving nations northward is the very force melting the ice in the first place. So now, the Arctic stands at a crossroads. Part battlefield, part laboratory, part warning to the rest of the planet. The world's biggest powers are circling it like chess players around a single board, each one trying to make the first move that will decide the next century. Russia's bases gleam under the northern lights, China's icebreakers glide quietly through the mist, and Western militaries are training once again in the biting cold. All the while, the ice continues to shrink. Slow, steady, unstoppable. The question is, where does this lead? Will the Arctic become a zone of cooperation where nations come together to protect one of Earth's last wild places? Or will it become the next flashpoint, a stage where ambition, greed, and rivalry collide in the name of progress? Can science and diplomacy keep pace with melting ice and rising tension? And most of all, will humanity learn from what's happening at the top of the world, or repeat the same mistakes that brought us here? Because as the Arctic transforms before our eyes, one thing is certain. The story isn't ending. It's only beginning, and the direction it takes next is up to us.